where I'm sure everything's gonna go great, and there's gonna be no more hiccups. Hello, this is Soundout here, and apparently I'm now a werewolf. Month of Monsters is going to keep trucking on though, I'm not letting this stop me. Today on day 11, we're talking about 1941's The Wolfman, and specifically the Neca ultimate figure within. But context on The Wolfman itself. This is a film that has been sort of the basis of a lot of future adaptations of werewolf stories. You have the decently nice guy who's made some mistakes in his life, stumbling upon a werewolf who ends up biting him, ends up dying, and then now he's been cursed with a werewolf. Sort of a similar story going on here. But in terms of the actual story of the Wolfman, it is meant to be a tragic tale. And in fact, the idea that the werewolf is a monster only because of the curse that has been put upon him is actually a really common core theme. Now, in terms of the film itself, this was Lon Chaney Jr.'s big entry into the monster world. His father, Lon Chaney, had been the Man of a Thousand Faces, portraying characters such as the Phantom of the Opera. Now, Lon Chaney Jr., originally known as Creighton Chaney, he was trying to be an actor, but it didn't quite work out, and he ended up going into being Lon Chaney Jr. as a stage name, which I think was also a request of Universal. That brought kind of the Lon Chaney name back into the monster world. And he actually really enjoyed playing the Wolfman because he was the only actor to play his character in all the appearances of that version of the character. He played Wolfman in The Wolfman. He also continued to play him in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, as well as House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. It's actually kind of an impressive run. He even returned for Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein. And as I mentioned in the previous Month of Monsters episode, he also did a Mexican film called House of Terror, where he played a werewolf. Now, the character of Larry Talbot, who is the Wolfman in that film, is actually quite interesting and has a lot of history to him. And I think that's what made him such a great sympathetic character, as well as Chaney's wonderful performance of sort of this man who you kind of feel bad that he get turned into a werewolf. And I think that's a common theme a lot of the time. Now, of course, we're going to be looking at an action figure based on that iconic film, released by Neca in 2022. So let's take a look at the Neca Ultimate, The Wolfman. So this is our first Neca Ultimate figure we're looking at on Month of Monsters. Definitely not the last. We'll look at the packaging. What's really cool about the Neca Ultimate box is they have the original poster art for the film that the figure is representing on the front of it. On the back, we get a collage of images that were created to promote the figure, making the figure look very, very nice in very cool pictures. The side of the box features a portrait of the Wolfman form of the figure, looking very nice yet again. I love the lighting effects with the different colors. On the other side, we can see a different kind of pose. I like how they add diorama elements, though I do wish they included some of those things like tree branches. The front flap does open up so you can see the figure inside. Now that we have the Wolfman out of his packaging, you can see that this is a spot-on likeness to Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. I'm just blown away at the level of detail and the level of precision that was done to the sculpting to provide a very solid-looking figure. They even went as far to make the haunched feet haunched. He actually doesn't have a flat foot to his foot. It's definitely more like the actual film, and so they included a small stand to help balance him out. The head sculpt is fantastic. This is like a near perfect recreation of the original Wolfman mask and prosthetics that were used in the film. I just can't believe how good it turned out. This is something that, this is a movie that's so old at this point, but yet this figure is so new and it just captures every one of those little details. This detail extends all the way down the body. You can see the werewolf claws in the hands, the different textures of the pants. It's really, really good, overall dry brushing in order to bring out some of the sculpted detail. Even to the back of the shirt, you can see that it's sculpted so that the fabric is uneven, it looks more natural, it looks more accurate, and once again, it has that dry brushed effect, which almost gives it a painted look, which I really do like. So for articulation, the head is ball jointed at 2 different points at the top and bottom of the neck. The shoulders move out, they move 360, it's a little stiff. The elbows bend, the elbows rotate, the wrists turn, they move in and out. The waist has a little bit minor movement, the hips move out, they move forward a bit on a ratcheted joint and back a bit. A thigh swivel is included, a knee bend, as well as a knee rotation, a ankle rotation, as well as a forward and back, left and right ankle pivot. Now, as for accessories, the Wolfman includes an angry expression. He's snarling, he's more dynamic. This is definitely more of an action pose type of piece to him, which I think is really, really cool. We also include the bear trap, which the Wolfman's foot got caught in, and naturally it is sized perfectly for the foot to be caught in it. I think it's such a cool accessory because it's unique to the film, and I think it provides just an extra piece of world building. Speaking of world building, the lower legs, the hands, and the head do swap out in order to have a Larry Talbot figure as well. And this is one of the coolest things I think they could have possibly done for this figure, and definitely helps justify its $40 price point, because having both forms of the Wolfman is incredible, and I never expected that to ever happen. You can see that the way that they sculpted the legs was to make sure that you could just have normal feet, as where the werewolf has the werewolf feet. Even if it does look like he rolled his pants up, it just kind of goes with the overall look from the film. The likeness to Lon Chaney Jr.'s Larry Talbot character here is also excellent. I know that they worked with the Chaney estate, as it was credited on the box, and just having this likeness definitely feels like it went through all the approvals it needed in order to really capture the likeness of the character as well as the actor. Also included for Larry is the cane that his father had with the wolf head to it, and he does have an extra hand to hold it. Such a great inclusion once again for world building and something from the film itself. Size-wise, he is in Neca 7-inch scale, so he kind of goes in the Mego size class of things. He's a bit bigger, as you can see with the Mego Screaming Werewolf, the other Lon Chaney Jr. werewolf. And you can also see that he would tower over something like a Marvel Legend because he's in a true 7-inch scale as opposed to a closer to 6-inch scale that a lot of other action figure lines do. What's also kind of fun is that we have the two extremes of Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman with the Neca Ultimate on the left and the Reaction on the right, with the Reaction just being a very basic figure, whereas the Neca Ultimate has everything you could be looking for. So overall, the figure does look incredible. I think that the detail and the articulation is good, and the joints feel solid. A lot of older Neca and even some recent Neca are very brittle feeling, and the joints can break easily if you pose it too much. This guy feels a lot more solid, which I hope is a new direction for Neca, where their figures are more, well, action figures and not, don't pose it too much or else something's gonna break. Everything feels pretty solid on him, including all the swapping parts, which is definitely a plus. So conclusively, this is the ultimate version of the Wolfman. While some care should be taken with the joints as Neca goes for that, sort of stiff art house type figure, if you're looking for a Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman figure, there's no better option. But there is two other options for this mold. Option one, there is a black and white edition of this figure, as there is with the other Universal monster figures from Neca. I've opted not to pick these up. This is just me using technical wizardry to give you the idea, but essentially you can get the figures in black and white. But if you're wanting something that's more of a throwback, there is a retro carded Wolfman. Now this is the same figure, except this is done to replicate the 80s Universal Mini Monsters packaging and those figures. Right down to the flavor text, which does even mention Universal City Studios, back when it was Universal City Studios and not Universal Studios, the Wolfman. The Neca logo is there in place of things, the modern Universal Monsters logo, and I like that it says an authentic posable action figure based on the classic Universal's famous Mini Monsters collection from the early 1980s. Except these are recommended ages 14 years and older. This figure does call out that it does glow in the dark, which is true. The only part that actually does glow in the dark is the face itself. It's not the whole figure, it's just the face, which kind of makes some sense, but one of the other retro style figures is definitely more impressive in the glow in the dark category. The back of the packaging, very basic, but does show the 3 retro carded monsters in the first wave, which is the Mummy, the Frankenstein monster, and the Wolfman. On the top, it's got credits, much like the regular Ultimate box, that's got, the director of development, sculpting, fabrication, paint, all the people that do all the work for these, and I love seeing credits like that on figures. Here you can see black and white shot of all 3 figures, where you can't really see the new paint changes to them, except for the Wolfman. Of note, if you do plan on opening this figure up, the stand is included, so you will still be able to stand, even though he doesn't have any of the other accessories. And like I mentioned, this is a repaint of the Ultimate Wolfman. As you can see, putting them side by side, they went for the more saturated colors, the blood effect, the really basic colors that you would have found on those 80s figures, compared to the Ultimate, which is definitely trying to be as close to the movie as possible, with imitating the colors that were seen on posters, just to kind of give it a more film-accurate look. So ultimately, it doesn't matter which color version of this that you would want. It depends on personal preference. I like the retro being on that big card back. I like the Ultimate being more film-accurate. I ultimately just didn't buy the black and white, though I keep getting tempted by it every time I see it in stock somewhere. The figure is excellent, and if you're wanting Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman as an action figure, there really is no better alternative. So overall, NECA's Ultimate Wolfman figure is really cool, and I love the fact that they included both Werewolf parts and Larry Talbot parts, so you get kind of the both sides, because transformation is a major factor in a lot of Werewolf stories. That's it for today's episode, and thank you all for watching. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at some werewolves that sort of look a little bit different, and ones that come from media you may recognize. And stay tuned for that. I'm going to go try to figure out if this thing will subside when the full moon goes down and the sun rises. But I guess we'll find out tomorrow.